Two-sided trade is the best way to describe today's corn trade so far. In fact, you could almost apply that to most of the grains here on this Monday. Welcome back to Market Day Report. I'm John Jenkinson, and here we go. Let's look at the corn numbers first. This market started out with the overnight trade just fractionally higher, and here at mid-session, we've still got a little bit fractionally higher now. December corn is steady at 348 3/4. March corn up a quarter at 362 3/4 after being down to 361 1/4 earlier in the day. July up a quarter at 379. Let's go to the edge of the trading floor at the CME Group in Chicago, and we're being joined by Scott Gecas here, and we want to go through these step by step. Scott, thank you very much for being here with us. First of all, let's go through these commodities one by one and talk about the upper range and the lower range of limits, because we've been trading in this very, very narrow range. And so what's it going to take to get us out of this range? And we'll start with the corn market first.
Well, the corn market, I mean, you're seeing a little bit higher expected yields. You know, it is expected, the harvest is expected to slow down in the Midwest. You know, they also have concerns about just leaving the corn in the fields just to have the dry down. You know, but if that does continue to happen, you could see at least about a 10%, reduction in production. You know, the traders are mixed. It's in a little bit of an oversold market. So, I mean, we're looking for something to change here and push us maybe a little bit higher.
This afternoon's crop report probably won't offer much then?
I wouldn't think so. I think unless if the numbers come out outside of the range, you can expect, especially, just across the board, just sideways movement.
All right, let's move on to the soybean market then. We'll bring everybody up to date on these numbers next. Right now, November soybeans down 2 3/4, 972 1/2. July soybeans down 1 3/4 at 1011 3/4. This was a market that traded just a little bit higher last night, Scott, but here we are finding ourselves stuck in this range again.
Right, exactly. And, even though in the yields in previous, right now they're right around the record highs, but, the market is looking for a little bit lower in yields. Traders are still net long, but they are also decreasing, adding new contracts.
All right, moving on to the wheat market then today. We go to the Chicago wheat market, and we see here where nearby December down 425 1/4. New crop July down 2 1/4 at 471 3/4. Kansas City wheat for July right now down 2 1/2 at 472 1/4. Minneapolis July wheat is actually up 3 1/2 right now at 642 3/4. I want to back up here and go back to the Chicago and the Kansas City wheat, Scott. This market here is also struggling just a little bit today. Not necessarily range bound, but it just seems like there's still a concern, if I can use that term, about the supply of wheat we still have.
Right, and then that concern's also coming, through with the Russian exports being at record highs as well. The U.S. is starting to see some fierce competition regarding export prices. The dollar move isn't really helping things that much in that aspect. I would look for a test about maybe 416 1/2 or so.
Okay, let's talk about that dollar right now. We'll look at these dollar numbers and bring everyone up to date on what the latest is. December dollar right now down 410, 94.42, 420. March is at 94.140. That's down 380. So the dollar retreating a little bit, but is it getting ready to go back up and test resistance?
Well, the dollar's it's a finicky market. I mean, that's going to be based on this tax reform and a couple other fundamentals in the worldwide market. But right now, they're not helping export prices at all.
All right, Scott Gecas with Longleaf Trading is here with us, and when we return, we'll get all the livestock trade numbers and get his analysis straight ahead here on the Market Day Report. Here on the Market Day Report, it's time to get you up to date on the latest with the livestock trade. We start with the live cattle market first. While Scott Gecas is standing by with us here, it's October live cattle, but this contract expiring 467 higher. That is at 120.05. The one we really need to pay attention to is December up 260, 123.42. February up 185 at 127.60. And Scott Gecas with Longleaf Trading is at the edge of the trading floor there in Chicago at the CME Group. All right, Scott. I was talking to one feedlot manager earlier. He says, well, there'll never be another bad day in the cattle market, but I think he was saying that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, it was. If you looked at the move close to the end of Friday's market close, we had a huge rally. It was very unexpected. You know, it's still trading at a premium. The cash, the slaughter numbers are a little bit higher. Traders are still net long. We're a little bit bullish. I would look for a test of about 126.30 or so, like something like that. You know, any negative news, though, with the market, with the supply and overbought, you know, you're going to see a sharp sell-off either in cattle and in hogs. Well,
could that also, that sell-off that you mentioned, could that also come from a shall we say, uncertain economy then?
You would think, but, you know, again, the supply values are still there, expected walking into the holiday season here. You know, people are still going to be buying, you know, the holiday hams and so forth like that. So, you know, until those numbers come in a little bit, you know, I would expect the trend to still remain bullish.
Scott, let's look at this feeder cattle market here together and see where we're at here. It's November feeder cattle up 234, 158.82. January feeders up 225 at 158.20. How closely is the feeder cattle market now watching the corn market?
Well, yeah, everything regarding, you know, the cattle feeders and going into corn, you know, especially with if they do leave the crop in, you know, they're looking for about a 10% reduction. So that's definitely going to affect, you know, cattle prices.
All right, now on to the hog market. You mentioned hams just a little bit ago, and we've got December lean hogs up 27, 64, 72. February up 37 at 70, 62. April hogs up 23 at 74, 48. We had the cutout information that was out a little bit ago, and when we looked at those cutouts, they were all mostly higher with the exception of the beef there, up 14 on the choice, and the selects up $1.91. If we look at the pork cutouts, they were also mostly higher with the exception of the loin market. But you mentioned that ham market in particular, up $1.29 at 71.40. Is this a market that will continue to probably try to take advantage of the holiday season around the corner?
I definitely think so. Until those supply numbers come in, you know, I would say, you know, they still need a little bit stronger export numbers coming into play to sustain these levels. But, you know, again, the traders are still net long, and any negative news is going to spark a sharp, sharp sell-off.
All right. Earlier when we checked also, the Dow still headed higher by 80 to 90 points today, but still back off of its record high. Any thoughts for this week where traders are thinking?
As far as, you know, the equity markets, I mean, it's anyone's guess right now. I mean, at the all-time highs, you know, there's something called white space. It's uncharted territory. No one knows which way it's going to go from here. So, but I would expect, you know, a little bit melt up until, you know, they figure out this tax reform and some of the other fundamentals coming into the end of the year.
But we are in that quote-unquote white space right now then?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, not right now because we are off a little bit. But, you know, it's still uncharted territory. These are all-time highs. You know, no one's seen these levels before in the equities. So
all right,
we'll see how that plays out at the end of the year.
Sounds good. Scott Gecas here with Longleaf Trading. How do we find out more about you?
Longleaftrading.com, or you can always call 312-483-2183.
All right, Scott Gecas here with us from the edge of the trading floor at the CME Group. Scott, thank you very much for joining us today. And as he mentioned, Mark, that dollar just kind of trading a little bit sideways here today, but looking at another high, maybe.
Exactly right, yeah. And now with the budget being sent to the president here, interesting to watch that Dow and what that tax reform might look like.
Absolutely.
Thank you, John.